Welcome to the stream, everyone. I am Corvus Oculum. Thanks for coming out tonight. How is everyone doing? Friday night. Woohoo! Tonight we're going to be working on a resin kit from Industria Mechanica. Hey Tear, how are you? How's your Friday going? We're going to be working on an Industria Mechanica, excellent, nice. Industria Mechanica resin kit from the illustrious builder Fitch & Fu, aka Michael Fichtenmeyer, who is the sole proprietor and owner and one-man show behind the Industria Mechanica brand. It's a mixed media resin kit in 1/35 scale that is a little tugboat type thing from the artwork of Ian McHugh. I'll give you a little tour of it here. Find my mouse. How are my levels? Just out of curiosity in chat. Is the music too loud? Is my voice too loud? Is my voice too soft? Is the music too soft? Etc., etc. Hopefully everything is good. Let me know if not. So this is awesome. That's good. Thank you. So this is, of course, the just a sort of a vision board, image board that I have of the. I use this as a reference. Use this tool. It's called PureRef. It's an application that lets me drop images on it, and I can view them as reference pieces for the work that I'm doing. So this is kind of the vibe that this particular model is. They're from the online artist named Ian McHugh, who is an illustrator and storyboard artist and concept artist for film and video games. The company that you can see just down here, Industria Mechanica, is an online shop that sells these resin kits, and the owner of this store creates masters of these, like sculptures basically, of these pictures that Ian McHugh and illustrations that Ian McHugh has done, and realizes them in resin kits for people like myself to build. I'll give you a tour of the website, Industria Mechanica, in a minute, but this is essentially a right in my wheelhouse, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended, I don't know. But Ian McHugh's sort of vision of the future, or his IP or content, or what I don't know what you would call it, but his main subject matter is this world, this dystopian sort of diesel punk world where people live in floating ships and floating cities. And what's great about it is you have this cool kind of, like, he didn't go all pointy, slick looking spaceship or aircraft or hovercraft. He went like jalopy, sloop, beat up tugboat and more, which I just think is a really imaginative sci-fi kind of trope that he's created. This is the kit itself that you're seeing here. This is what the final product will look close to. I mean, this was the reference one that Fitch & Fu did for Industria Mechanica to sell the product. I will be creating something along the same lines, but with my own touch on it. Just to give you an idea, it does have a scale figure that's included with it. This part up on top that you can see here isn't part of the kit. He's kit bashed that together. Water diorama, the whole shoot, the whole thing. It's got everything. When I said it's a multimedia kit, what I meant by that is what you can see here on the screen is called photo etch. Photo etch is a very thin brass sheet that is designed to be cut out and shaped into various things. If we just go back to this camera, I can show you roughly what we have. So we have, it's comprised basically of the hull is two main pieces of resin. Then there's some interior bits, like this is the engine, as well as, some little jet thrusters and things that get glued on at the end. And then these sort of fin, bumper, panel, wing things, I don't know what you would call them, but they're attached to the side of the hull. But then what you see here for the wheelhouse, this is all brass that comes out of these sheets, these very thin brass sheets. And you can kind of see here, this hole that you see here, this one, was just like, imagine in high school, or not high school, but like preschool, where you had the cube that was cut out and laid flat. That's basically what that looked like. It had to be cut out and then bent into shape to make this wheelhouse. The windows are all photo etched, these window frames that you see here. Let's see if I can get zoomed in a little better. Adjust my light. Focus. There you go. All those riveted windows, those are all separate pieces of photo etch that were glued on. There are a few pieces missing here. There'll be some, there's some sort of flaps, like sunshades that are going to go on there. They'll get painted up and done afterwards. There is a door that goes in the back, and there's also a full, now the windows, just so you're aware, are simply masked. These are little pieces of yellow masking tape that have been painted over because, as I'll explain in a bit, what I'm doing here is called a hairspray. It's called hairspray rust chipping, but I'm not going to actually be using hairspray. It was named that way because you can use hairspray to do it. Behind this tape, there is actually some clear acetate sheets that double for windows. And the deck itself has also been taped over completely because it's real wood. I think I can peel a corner up here to show you. You can see there is actually real wood. It's been laser etched in order to create the various planks, and there's some little grates that go, if I can pick one up, let me get my tweezers. Tiny little grates. This is the kind of thing that photo etch is amazing for. There's no way you could cast such fine little details like what you can see there is the grating in resin. That has to be done in metal. So these little plates go right on top. I can have one sort of half open. Gives you lots of different options for when you do the final layout of the diorama, how you want things set up. Inside the wheelhouse, it's kind of dark in there right now, but imagine there's light in there. It comes with a little tiny navigation console, as well as a cute little seat for your guy to sit on, your little captain dude to sit on. This is the top. That's going to go there. There's a little instrument panel that is going to go here somewhere like this. That's on, so that'll be upside down in it. What else? It's going to have a full lighting kit, so I will be installing very small LEDs into both of these headlights. With the wires running out and down into the base unit where there'll be a power system for it. Additionally, I'll probably put some interior lighting on top of the roof area here to illuminate the inside of the captain's cabin, the wheelhouse. And then on the back of the Waldo, there's a little tiny, there's like a searchlight type thing that goes on the stern like this. That'll just have a super bright LED in it. I haven't decided if I'm going to illuminate it, to scale for, nautical themes. Like if we go back to my reference stuff here, and we just boat lighting is generally, white light at the back and then a red on the right side, and then a green light on the, I guess that's port. I can never remember. But I don't know if I'll do it that way. I might just illuminate it with white lights. So the technique that we're going to be focusing on this evening is what you can see here. This sort of practice is, I want this thing, as you saw in the reference photos, to look really weathered and beaten up and battered, because it's a working, tug or whatever you want to call it. So hairspray chipping is a weathering technique that's been used in scale models for probably about 20 years. Made popular by a gentleman named Michael Rinaldi, who is a Portland, Oregon-based scale modeler who does scale armor, German armor, Allied armor, World War II. That's where the technique was kind of, it was championed. And the way it works is you put down a base rust layer. So if we look at this, I've essentially painted this guy in the color that will be poking through as rust chips. And you paint the entire model that way. It looks a little weird, but it's just how you start, because you're going to cover most of this up with your paint. But before you do that, you hit it with a layer. What they used to do is hit it with a layer of hairspray, like quite literally. This. And it works. It works actually really well. So you put that on, you let it dry, and then you paint over it with the color. And you let that dry. And then you just take a wet brush or a toothpick, and you start worrying away the areas where you want the rust, that color underneath, to come through. So this evening, my goal is hopefully to get a strip of yellow all the way around this ship and weathered as well. And if I have time, I may also consider doing the wheelhouse, if time permits. It's kind of slow going because you have to do it in little patch by little patch. We're not going to use the hairspray though. We're actually going to use sort of an improved version of the hairspray, which is the AK Interactive Heavy Chipping Acrylic Fluid. This just gets airbrushed on rather than sprayed out of the can, and it basically works exactly the same way. Before I start actually painting, let me just show you quickly what Industria Mechanica is about. Just go back to the desktop view here and bring up Firefox. So Industria Mechanica is a company that's based out of the United States, upper northeast. I think they're Baltimore or somewhere like that. He's a one-man show. Michael Fichtenmeyer goes by Fichtenfu as a builder, but he basically creates in his basement these kits that are they're just amazing, because we live really in scale modeling. You live kind of in a world of Gunpla, with like Gundam Robot Mecha, and scale models. So to get that kind of niche, esoteric sci-fi thing that I like personally, or diesel punk, there are very few people creating those sorts of kits. I mean, there's Mackay and like Machine and Krieger and things like that, but they're kind of esoteric as well and difficult to get outside of Japan. We're increasingly seeing them, but whatever, more on that later. But here, if we click on this is the content that he was creating from Ian McHugh's original designs. There's 4 models that he made, 4 large models. He modeled the Wasp, which is a sort of hover bike type thing. $100 US, not terrible. Get some pictures of it there, so you can see it's a large resin kit with photo etch parts. Paints up nice. I don't actually own that. I'm thinking of getting it, but I'm sort of on the fence. And then the Waldo, which is what we're currently working on, which we saw in the reference paintings. Those are the instructions, and that's what the kit looks like prior to anything being done to it. And then more of his final artwork. But in the same IP, he also has this, the Skymark, and I do have one of these. I actually have two Waldos that I'm going to be building. This is more of a buoy type thing that floats in the air. Has the signals on the top and weather vanes and whatnot. It's mostly photo etch. All the top portion of it, the gantry, is all done out of photo etch and carefully bent into shape. The plan ultimately is to have maybe a couple sets of dioramas with, I'll have the two Waldos together, I think, much like his reference piece with the wood coming out, the log sort of pier, abandoned pier coming out of the ocean. And then I'll have the Skymark with the Remora, which is the largest kit that he sells. The Remora, so I have a Remora, I have a Skymark, and I have two Waldos. The Remora is a really big sort of sloop. It's about twice the size of the Waldo, and it's maybe even an easier build. You can see it here. I don't know if I can zoom in. No, it keeps resizing it. But, it ticks all the boxes for me as far as, things in the future. Probably not as great as we think they're going to be. And, people are poor and maybe make a living, hauling junk on these ships. So just a neat kind of IP. So that's Industria Mechanica. Great company, comes up with amazing stuff. He's got tons and tons and tons of models that I've did. I just actually finished a diorama based on the Rook, which is a Michael Herm design. He doesn't have any real finished renderings of it. Maybe I'll show it on stream after we get somewhere with this, but until then, that is Industria Mechanica. A very cool site. Bookmark it if you can. In chat, if you type !project, that's !project. Here, I will do it for you. You can get some information on it directly. So at any time, that's how it works. Anything I'm working on will be seen through the !project if you want some more information. Okay, so I think we should probably get started. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be moving over to the spray booth. I'm going to mask off about this much, I think, of this particular piece. We'll just put a piece of tape right here. And we're going to be putting on a layer of hairspray, followed by, not hairspray, but the chipping, heavy chipping fluid, followed by some of the paint. We're going to be using, for this, Tamiya XF3 flat yellow. This is a solvent-based acrylic. It's really not meant to be hand painted with a brush. It works best if you use a spray or an airbrush. Sorry. We'll be spraying that on, letting that dry, and then we'll be working at it with some just some weathering brushes and water in order to get it looking rusty. I do it one sort of small section at a time, because what I find, especially with the chipping fluids, is if I were to do the entire thing and started here, the ability to chip the paint kind of once you put the yellow paint on top of the chipping fluid, a timer starts, and if you let it cure up too much, it becomes increasingly difficult to actually chip. And so I like to just work on small portions at a time. The reason I have all the bottom masked is I don't want any of that yellow. And I will be doing the interior. I don't know if I'm going to do the interior in yellow, but I want to keep it masked just so I don't accidentally overspray yellow into there. So with that, I think what we'll do, well, first of all, we're just going to mask off the region that we're not going to paint. And as always, this is a learning stream. If anyone has any questions about what I'm doing or just anything in general, just go ahead and put it in chat and I will answer. I'm generally pretty good at keeping up on chat when I'm sitting here. At the spray booth, I don't have good access to a screen with chat on it, but put the comments in anyway, and when I come back to the workbench here, I will catch up. My camera's not quite in the right spot. Just going to make a quick little adjustment here. Scalpel is dull. There we go. So that gives us a nice little spot to paint. So let's go over to the spray booth. Whoops. All right. So let me get my airbrush camera set up. All right, hopefully you can still hear me. All right. So. Floors. All right, I think we're good now. For this, we're going to be using the Harder and Steenbeck German-made Infinity CR Plus airbrush. It's a double-action airbrush, so press down to make air come out, pull back to make paint come out. Easy peasy. To make sure all my paint's stuck down correctly. let's get that chipping fluid. Just a few drops. Of our air. And apply the chipping fluid. And generally what I'll do is I'll let it dry, but there's no need to wait for that to happen. Simply use a hair dryer. Nice and dry now, and we'll hit it again. So now there's 2 coats of the chipping fluid on there. Now, so let's just put that back in here. Run a little bit of the Vallejo thinner through the airbrush just to clean it out. Don't really want to be mixing that chipping fluid with paint. Again, if you have any questions about anything, just put them in chat. I can answer. I have my phone here in front of me at the spray booth, so I will see them. Green. Yellow. Give it a mix. I'm spraying at 20 psi. We don't need much of this, so just a few drops. Actually, I always do that. I shouldn't really do it that way. It's better to put the thinner in first. I'm going to be using Tamiya X20A thinner. Even though the Tamiya paints are acrylics, they're solvent-based acrylics, so you really should not be using water to thin them, like you would with Vallejo or Pro-Acryl. You want to be using either the proper Tamiya thinner or something like a product like Mr. Color Leveling Thinner. Works just fine with it. I'm just going to stick with this though. So we'll put in, say, 10 drops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 12, 12. we will do 12 drops of the yellow on top of the thinner. And what I'll do to mix it in there is just I put the dropper in and blow. Do you mean will the paint keep sealed in the bottles, or will the paint keep in the airbrush? Sealed in the bottles, they'll keep for a very, very, very long time. In the airbrush, not so much. They'll start to dry around the cup, and you just, with the airbrush, the trick really is to just not let any dried paint get sucked down into where the needle is. And I'll show you sort of how the airbrush comes apart afterwards, how it's cleaned. So see, we've got paint in there. This is the small cup. This comes with this airbrush. It's kind of an upmarket one. It also comes with a larger screw-in cup. But we're just doing little patches. I'm going to reattach my air hose. I don't like working with the air hose attached because if I step on it, it yanks the airbrush into my lap. So just move the stand aside so you can see it's in there. Again, this is a 1-to-1 ratio of paint to thinner. See here. Okay, so paint's on my hands. I really should have a glove on, but I'm generally just touching the masking, so it's okay. So we're going to just do, the trick with airbrushes is you want to do just very light coats. Just like that. Really light coat. Quite good. I think what I'll do is put it with the hair dryer. Getting towards the end, but that's all right. Should have enough. Actually, I don't want to do the top. I don't think I put dripping fluid on the top, so we'll leave that. If I put too much paint down, you'll get like orange peel. That's sort of the effect, or like a crackler type effect, which you want to avoid. So just light, even coats. You let them dry a little bit between. Yellow is kind of a notorious color to paint with. Sucks. See, and I oversprayed right there a little bit of paint pooling, right where my thumb is. Kind of hard to see. This is just a GoPro, this camera. It doesn't quite resolve as it should. Let's do this. That edge. I think that's probably good enough, so let's just put that over there and clean this thing out. It's important to clean the brush out between, because that paint will dry up in there. Just use again thinner. Is you can pinch the end of an airbrush and it backflows the air into the cup. It lets you kind of just clean out the nozzle that's in there. And then we just spray it into this collection device. I don't know what you call these, airbrush cleaning pot.
Doing this all in a spray booth. The spray booth is vented outside because there's certain paints like lacquers that are just super toxic. These aren't lacquers. These are just acrylics, but you still don't want to be breathing that kind of stuff. So we'll just clean out the majority of the paint. And then to do a real good clean, what I will do is just use a bit of actual lacquer thinner, like I showed you before, from this color. This lacquer thinner tends to clean everything. Nasty stuff. Backfill that again. And spray that into the booth. The pot first. We'll just give it one little wipe. That should do. So we'll unplug that. There. And we'll come back to other.
Let's turn the blower down. Okay. So the next step is the actual chipping. So I just want to get into a comfortable position here. That should work. So let's re-aim this. All right. So the trick with with hairspray chipping or chipping with these AK Interactive products is less is more. It's really easy to kind of go insane and like just really ruin it by taking off so much paint that it doesn't look realistic. There's always a little bit of randomness to it. You know, ideally, if you wanted exact placement of all of your chipped weathering, you're going to use a paintbrush. But this is kind of a faster way of doing things, and I don't know, it's more fun. I like the fact that there's a bit of entropy in it, like weathered metals and the effects that you get from things being out in the rain or the sleet and snow. It is random, so painting those in can one would say is also equally as challenging. But yeah, we're gonna just do it with this fluid, obviously, and we're just going to be smart about where we're going to put it, right? Stuff chips generally around edges, and then maybe a little bit around some of the features, and then we're also just going to take a toothpick or something and put some scratches on it, and that's it. You'll note that I'm using some really vibrant colors. I do that on purpose because this is really just like the effect that you see here. This isn't the end effect. There's also going to be washes of oil paints in I call it OPR, oil paint rendering, where I add drip marks and corrosion and all sorts of other color effects to it to weather it in order to make it look more realistic. That's all done with oil paints because they're ideal for that. And then Finally, there may be some filters to change shade, as well as dry pigment supplied at the end. So you want to kind of do a pretty high saturation paint if you're going to be applying a whole bunch more weathering product to it, because every time you apply something, the color is going to get more and more dull. And so it's good to sort of start with a get this exposed properly. It's good to start with something that's brighter, so that if I were to paint this the same color of yellow you saw, that dulled kind of muddy yellow that you saw in the reference art, by the time I applied all the OPR and pigments, it would be even darker. So you want to avoid that by kind of overcompensating with the paint color at the beginning. You kind of do a Fisher-Price paint job at the start, and then know that it's going to tone down to where you want it through the other processes. So the clock is ticking on this, so I'm just going to get a little cup of water. There it is. Get that. And we wet the brush. I need a paper towel as well. Wet brush, damp it off, and then I just start working gently. You wet the paint, it reactivates it. And you can see it starting there. Kind of goes to reason that water drips down, and so there should be more weathering at the bottom of the panel than at the top. So we're going to work the bottom bit more. See those large chips there? I try to avoid that. They don't look quite to scale. So it's sort of like a less is more. Just get that wet to activate that area as we work into it. I sort of start with the brush, and then we transition into just a wood stick. Kind of stab at it a bit, get the effect that you want. Work along this edge. You know, the edges are where the wear, if you think about it, really happens, because you've got just that much more you know, people are hanging over the sides. It's my stupid GoPro doing whatever it's doing, has a mind of its own. Then down this seam, getting camera. If I'm ever out of camera shot, just shoot something up on chat. Then over here on this side, let's get this in here. Doing the corners. Okay, so we'll just re-wet this area, and then we're gonna just grab a pointy stick. That'll do. And I can really chip the bottom area. Keep it random. Then corner here, more along this line. More up here. Then you might want some scratches. These are always fun. So where would a scratch be? Probably like straight down, hey? Maybe on a bit of an angle. That. Maybe another one just sort of right beside it. I'm just using the lightest of touches here. And I don't like this over here. I'm gonna fix this up. I think we need to maybe do a bit more here. The brush. This side here. Nice big piece there came off. Let's do something over here. I think maybe we need a scratch over here. And then when you have these kinds of features, you know, you've got, those are areas where water will drip. So let's moisten that. Moist. And we'll just do some of this kind of thing, just because it makes sense to. And same around this. This is where one of those fins attaches, so it's kind of going to be obscured anyway, so I don't really need to do too much here. Like, I mean, this kind of a thing is going to, actually, it's specifically it's this one. It's going to be here. So it's going to be kind of covered. So we don't need to go too crazy behind there. This edge here needs some love. Kind of feel a bit Bob Rossi doing these kinds of streams. Just gonna do a little shrub right here. Okay, let's evaluate. I think that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. How am I doing so far? So the next step is I don't want to have to mask over that until it dries and cures a little bit. So what I'm going to do is move on to the stern. You see here. And so the next one we'll do this area. We'll do this area here. Yeah, we'll do this part. Awesome. Youth doing great. You're hopefully not referring to me as youth. I'm far from youth. I'm just teasing. Just thinking here, do I want to use... Yeah, I'll just use this. All right. Closer. Well, no. Just putting a little tape there because I don't want to overspray onto the top of the stern. This is Tamiya special tape that's used for it's common in hobbies. It comes in a number of different thicknesses. It's masking tape. There's all sorts of different sizes of it. It's kind of expensive though, so I just use frog tape for the larger areas. This is really dull. So that should work. Makeup brushes make the best dusters. Useless for everything else, but great for dusters. Okay. Now, see what happened to my GoPro. Where's my mouse? Yeah, it did something weird. I think it overheats or something. Should replace it with just a regular webcam. All right, so let's go back to the spray booth. Before. A little closer. A little careful because there was lacquer thinner in that. In fact. Okay. I'm going to run my fingernail along the masking tape, make sure that it's sealed really well. This time I'm going to try to remember to get the top. I didn't do on the other one. So let's I got an awful lot of stuff on there. Hopefully that's okay. Hit it with the airbrush or the hairdryer, dry it right out. Good. This time I'm going to get a glove. All right, what did I do? All right, close off, and
drops. Yellow. Again, 1-to-1 ratio of thinner and paint for the Tamiya paint. Any new viewers in chat, we are painting a Industria Mechanica Waldo garage kit resin kit. Just doing some weathering techniques with AK Interactive heavy chipping fluid. So again, light coats. The 1/35th scale design by Michael Fichtenmeyer from the artwork of Ian McHugh. Hair dryer. I have to do this bit off camera because it just blows a bunch of dust into my spray booth. Try it out, give it another little coat. I think that's enough. Bit of extra paint in there. Just void. Brush a bit of it clean. Back over to the workbench. Think that properly. Get the lacquer thinner. Break up the one. Pipe that smells like death. That's the one that has the lacquer thinner. Might have to do a little bit of a clean on this. I think there's some junk in it. Good. That later. In here.
All right. New viewers in chat, I'm working on a 1/35th scale Waldo resin kit from Industria Mechanica. It's sort of a diesel punk floating old ship type thing, for lack of a better description. Beautiful IP from an artist he's a concept artist for film and game industry named Ian McHugh. In chat, !project will give you some information on the creator of the kit itself, as well as the link to industriamechanica.com, which is the website store that you can purchase these types of kits from. Unfortunately, the Waldo is currently sold out. He's having a hell of a time getting resin kits cast and shipped into America from China, I believe, where his workshops are. But hopefully that'll get easier as the virus sort of people get vaccinated and things get a little bit back to normal. So we're just about to do the rust chipping, which is being done using the hairspray chipping technique, but I'm not using hairspray. I'm using the AK Interactive acrylic fluid heavy chipping. It's a learning channel. If you have any questions about anything, any comments, feel free. If you just want to say how your evening's been, that's fine. What you're up to, what projects you're working on, it's all good. So as always, we're going to just start on the top. Let me get in here a bit closer. So the way that this fluid works is you wet the paint and it activates it again. And then you can come back to it. So you just kind of wet it like that. And then when you come back to it, it'll chip. And I'm just using old shitty brushes. Epic Bra Movement, hello. How are you? How are you this evening? How's your Friday been? What are you working on? That's what you try to avoid, but it's okay. Sometimes the spirit just takes it. Yeah. It has really been a long time. This is, I streamed a little bit back in March of last year, but I thought, you know what? I really wasn't happy with the content I was doing. And so I thought I'm going to just take a really long break. And, work picked up after we went back to work here in British Columbia. And I just didn't have time. I was tired at night. But things have kind of settled down in my life. So now I'm back at it. And hopefully I'll keep at it. Got to get a plan together, Kind of think of it as this is Corvus Oculum version 2.0. If I'm off camera, let me know. At this point, we'll switch to just using a toothpick, a very big toothpick. It's not really a toothpick at all. It's actually an airbrush part holder. And then we'll just start working around. And then I want to do the bottoms more because, as I mentioned earlier, it goes to reason that things are generally a little more worn out at the bottoms where the paint ends, water runs down, etc. Epic, do you paint? Do you do work on scale models or paint minis or put together Gunpla? Cool. Lunarsec, thank you for the follow. Much appreciated, my friend. And we'll just put a few scratches on here. Just let me finish this little bit up here, and I will give you the full, because we have a couple new followers here. I'll give you the tour. I think that's good. I'll just give it a quick dry with the hair dryer. Pardon the noise. So that's the latest. That's what we just did. This is what I did a little earlier. All right. So let me fix something here. Okay. I am working on a model from a company called Industria Mechanica, which is just Industria Mechanica, IKA at the end of that word, .com. He is based out of the United States and puts together like more esoteric niche resin kit, garage kit type stuff based on the sci-fi genre. This one in particular is from a series he did where he's collaborated with an artist named Ian McHugh. I can show you Ian McHugh's art. So jump over here. He's on Instagram just as ianmchugh.com. Probably better if I was logged in. Let's go. Give me a minute. Well, I'll show you Ian McHugh after. But for now, let's just stick with this. So he did 3 models based on Ian McHugh's art. He did a wasp, which is sort of a flying, like a flying hover bike type thing. Looks like this. So resin with photo etch, which is chemically etched brass sheets. He also did the one that we're working on, which I'll show you last. He did a floating buoy called the Skymark. So even though these things look like boats and nautical things, they're not. They're in a land where there is no water and everything floats above ground, like a sci-fi sort of hover. Things hover. There's a larger ship called Remora, which is quite long. It's maybe about a foot long. They look like that. I really like the aesthetic. They're like, they're not clean cut sci-fi. It's, dirty, bit of a naval Blade Runner universe type vibe going for it. But the model that I'm working on is this one here, which is the Waldo, and they're like little tugboats. So $130 US, currently out of stock, but and like I said earlier, he's having trouble getting kits in, but they will be coming later this year, hopefully. If I just go back over to my PureRef reference, this is my reference page, so you can kind of see what we're working on. This is what it looks like. Let me zoom in on a good shot of it. So I'm going for something similar to the design, this sort of reference design. So currently I'm painting the yellow around the chipped yellow around the base, the top of the hull, and I'll be moving on to the wheelhouse afterwards. And we're just doing the initial chipping that you see here, but it's not the final product. It's going to have a lot more weathering done through oil paint rendering, as well as some pin washes and pigments. But that's kind of the look that they are. They're sort of these cool ships. So that's the model anyway. So right now it's just the tedious process of going, of working my way around the hull and doing these panels and getting the chipping done. So now I think what we'll do is we'll switch over to this side. Cool, I'm glad you like it. He's not very well known. Like a lot of people kind of get into the hobby through either Scale Armor or Gunpla is massive. And a lot of people just don't really know about Industria Mechanica, but once you sort of put together a million Gunpla kits, or you've done a ton of Scale Armor, you kind of start looking for some other things just to keep things interesting. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with scale models, or Scale Armor, or the military stuff, or Gunpla. I love it as well, but these are sort of refreshing kits that you don't see very often. And if you look through his site, he has tons of different IP. So, he has ball joint doll robots that he builds himself, builds and designs himself. These are all posable. He's got some content that he licensed from Michael Herm. This is a Rook. It's like a quadrupedal battle mech type thing. The pictures aren't that great on it. I just finished a very large diorama with one of these. I'll show in a little bit on stream. He's also got some neat ocean faring stuff, like his submersible steampunk fish submarine. And then he has a few of Derek Stenning's Cosmonaut series. So I don't know if you're familiar with Adam Savage from Mythbusters. He has a YouTube channel called Tested. He paints one of these. He paints, I think it's this one, on one of his one-day builds. Sort of talked about Michael Fickenmeyer, the owner of Industria Mechanica, on it. So these are quite cool. I might get one of these eventually, but I kind of don't know how I feel about the figure painting quite yet, so we'll see. But it's a cool site. Have a look. Support him. We need more creators like him in the world. All right, let me get back to this. So I'm just masking off the front because we're going to do this panel next. Go back over to the spray booth.
I think we're good. All right, few drops of the heavy chipping. And you know what? I apologize. There's something. Brush. Just gonna give it a good deep clean here. Using a Harder and Steenbeck German-made Infinity CR Plus with a I think it has a 0.4 millimeter needle. Compressor set to 20 psi. That's 20 psi with the trigger full depressed. A lot of guys don't make that distinction when they tell you what PSI. I mean, the PSI dips when you use the brush. Okay. So again, light coats, probably about 2. See the sheen there from it? Just get the top. Already drying. No need to wait for paint to dry or this stuff to dry. You just hit it with the hair dryer. Again. Let's try a third coat just as an experiment on this one. Just a light coat. Very good. Clean that out. Tamiya X20 thinner. same 1-to-1 ratio. 1, 7, 12. Apologize if it sounds like a broken record with some of this stuff, but kind of just how I roll. And then what I do to mix it, you can pinch the end of the airbrush and blast some air up through the cup. I find just sort of sucking it slowly in and out of the bag works just as well to mix it. And it keeps the bubbles down. Okay, so very light brush, light coats. Don't want to put a lot of paint on at once. Let that dry. A little bit of overspray on the other side. I'm not worried about that. I may very well paint the inside yellow anyway. I haven't really decided. Probably, I think that's probably fine. Maybe this. Okay. Get this a little clean. That'll do.
I need another mic for the spray booth. Okay. So we're just going to keep going with the weathering. It's dry. Adjust the camera here a bit. Try not to let really big chunks like that come off, but sometimes it's just unavoidable. That's why the weathering with just paint and a paintbrush, you have a lot more control over situations like that. But well. Top railing would have a fair bit of rust and chipping anyway, so we can just bring that down in like that. It's looking good. I'm just going to come down this plate, this line here between the two metal plates. The areas that you leave water on will start to really, the paint will really start to soften. So you kind of have to be gentle if you've remember where you've been with a liquid. Kind of angle it into the light so I can see. Want to get along that bottom edge because that's going to transition hard into a like an off blue, I think, for the bottom of the hull. That's my color scheme, at least as it stands today. It's changed daily over the last couple weeks as I've thought about how to do this project. Needs more over here. Okay, switch to this. scratch. Do you drive a Caterpillar tractor? Most people don't have banana yellow cars. Trucks. And this corner needs to be bad. Down here, not happy with that brushing. Then this big patch over here, we can kind of fix that, make it not be as strange by just adding a little bit around it. There, kind of mitigates it. There may be a little scratch here. That. Let's bring one down right from the top. Okay, I think that's probably enough for that. OBS chat's doing something weird. Let's make sure this is still working. Yep. Okay, so at this point we can actually peel this. And just really carefully peel this part off. Nice. I'm happy with that. And then we have this back piece. We can actually show them what they look, show you what they look like side by side now. let's keep going. I want to get all of this done all the way around this evening. That's my goal. How long have I been on for? Coming up on 2 hours. Probably do maybe another hour. Okay, so at this point, I think I'm just going to do well, no, we're not going to do the front. We're going to do here. Should work. Need some fluids. Everybody has a drink. Cheers. Cheers. My rubber glove expander. Yeah, this one's done. Should never have taken the glove off. That'll do. Okay, let's get going here. Light coats of dipping fluid.
chipping fluid out. More of the Tamiya yellow. Give it a little mix. There. In a brush. The only part about airbrushing is kind of a drag. Normally I do the whole, but if you're using actual hairspray, not the AK chipping fluid, kind of do it all at once. I find that the AK kind of works better at the
All right. I gotta work on my Spotify playlists. Make sure that nothing's copyright. Too much water. Just want damp. So Tertar asks, what's included in the resin kits? Paints? No. I can give you, I can show you. Just let me finish this and I can give you a kind of a rundown of what's in them. Because when you were here when I started the stream and you sort of saw where I started from with the kit, with the shape, the pieces sort of looking like this. This is, I've actually put a lot of work into to get to this point. But a lot of that stuff is kind of boring, so it's not, I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence as to whether or not I put a lot of the prep work that goes into resin onto a stream. Especially with the larger kits. But good question. Okay. This one's close. That's good enough. Yeah, scratch. There. I think that's all I want to. I think that's as far as I want to go with that. Oh my God, find the middle of the camera for crying out loud. Here we go. It's good. Okay. Okay, so Terry asked what's included in the resin kit. Let me grab another Waldo and I can show you. Try to get the camera even further back here so you can see it all. You can see my mess. So obviously it didn't come in this piece of Tupperware. I just store my stuff in these. So I'll explain sort of right at the basic level, just in case there's anyone on chat who has never even heard of resin kits before. Unlike Gunpla or, Gunpla or Scale Armor models, which are injection molded, resin kits are made in silicone casts. So this particular model, which was made by Fitch and Fu, as I mentioned, he modeled this out of styrene. He like kit bashed it together and sanded and added all these little details on it, and then he sent it off to a workshop to have a silicone mold made out of it. Sorry, and that mold is then used to cast these pieces in. It's like a two-part resin. You pour these two materials together, and one of them is an activator for the resin, and it starts a chemical process which creates heat, and then it hardens into what you see here, and then they pop them out. They can usually make about 50 or 60 in one set of silicone molds, and then they will have lost too much of the detail, so they throw it out. So that's why he doesn't have a constant flow of these on the website. He orders them in batches, and once they sell out, then you have to kind of wait for him to come around to reorder another batch. So what you typically see in a resin kit is you'll have the nice piece like this, but there'll be these pour tabs, and this is literally where the holes where the resin was poured into the mold. And so I have to cut these off. I have to snip all those off and then sand. All right. And then you also need to find any seam lines, because it's probably a two-part mold. Two pieces go together to make it, and or the two pieces have to come apart to take it out is really the more critical. So there's often flash, they call it, where if we zoom in on this, you can see here there's a little wispy bit that needs to be cut out. So these are just the solid resin pieces. Right? Looks familiar, hey? Looks familiar, right? And this is the deck. Try to show you what it looks like in it. I think I can sort of snap it in. Don't want to break it. Anyway, it goes in there. Numerous other little pieces. These are all resin. So each of these parts has to be, the port tabs need to be that's probably a more reasonable distance. Let's get a little more light down here. Right, so this here is a port tab. So that needs to be cut, sanded. There's another one there. Needs to be cut and sanded. That is, of course, this piece. Some little clear lenticle sort of lenses that go over the lamps and lights. Tons of more smaller parts that all have to be tidied up. And then with this particular kit, like sometimes you'll get resin kits where the whole thing is resin. It's very common actually if you're getting them from any of the resin kits that come from Japan or Taiwan or China. Michael's at Industria Mechanica. He leans heavily on this stuff. This is called photo etch, and photo etch is done sort of with a UV exposed acetate over brass plate with an acid in it that reacts to the light. So you create a mask that gets put on top of the brass. You put it in an acid, and then you expose it to a strong UV light, and it actually, where the light hits the brass, it's not blocked by the mask. It actually will cut through. And what's amazing about it is you can create. Try not to blind you. You can create like diamond plate out of the brass here, and there's the door. And then this whole piece here, this is what gets cut out and folded into the shape of the wheelhouse that you see here. Right, that entire piece is this. And he includes a tiny little acetate that has the laser cut windows in it. This model, I would say on a scale of like 1 to 10 in terms of difficulty, is kind of up there. If you haven't worked with photo etch much, it can be a little bit frustrating if you're just starting with it, especially in the capacity that he's using it, because it's not uncommon to see in kits, but it's often just used in the method where you cut it out and you glue it on as surface detail, like the same way that these little vents were done. So you'd cut that out, and then it would get glued on. They would get glued on to these holes here to make it look like there's some drain holes, some vent holes in the bottom. That's how it's commonly used. It's less common to see photo etch in kits being used as entire pieces of structure like this. On that Remora, the larger ship that I showed you on his website, the entire wheelhouse is resin. Why he chose to do it this way with this one, I imagine it was to keep the costs down, but yeah, it takes a little more work to do this stuff. So, like on a scale of 1 to 10, where a 1, between 1 and 5 are the various levels of like Gunpla, Gundam kits. They are so well engineered that you literally need a pair of these. Like in theory, I mean, I know I'm really oversimplifying, and I don't mean to insult anyone who's who's really into Gunpla. I love the stuff and it's amazing. But Bandai have engineered Gunpla so well, you technically only need a pair of nippers. That's all you need to build a respectable Gunpla kit. Now, of course, you can take it to many, many levels beyond just cutting out parts and snapping them together. But you don't need glue. You don't need paint. Right? It's really, they're really well made. And if you're going to get into scale models or anything in scale hobbies, and you're not really sure, Gunpla is the way to go. Buy a cheap Gunpla kit, put it together. It's a ton of fun. This is more like a 7 to a 10 in terms of the difficulty, just because of all this extra sort of hard work that you have to do. But hopefully that answers your question, what's included in a resin kit. You basically get chunks of resin that you need to clean and wash. You actually literally have to wash them because there's a mold release compound that they put in the silicone molds that it's almost like a grease, and your paint will have trouble adhering to it if you don't wash them. So, you'll see people on stream doing resin kits and they're scrubbing them with green stuff and soap and stuff, and that's just par for the course. Yeah, but that's basically what's included. This one has a lot of stuff. This is the wood. This is actual real wood. It's quite a nice little touch. It's all laser etched. You can see there's even little nail holes and rivets. Very cool. It's a very cool kit. Comes also with some wire, which is used as like rope, and also some stiff wire, which can be used. My arm's in the way. Some stiff wire which can be used to bend into shape for antennas and things. It doesn't come with any LEDs. All of that stuff I'll add myself afterwards. I also picked up from him these are some little cats, like literally little cats that I'm going to have on the ships, as in addition to there's some dogs. It's kind of cool. Oh, and of course, they come with a sheet of decals. Which, what's nice about this particular kit is, let me just get these better lined up and then get the exposure a little darker. So you can see it. He gives you enough to do 3 different ships. So there's this one here, the Portland 55 is one name that you could put on it, or you can use the Betty B, or of course the Waldo, which is a nice little touch, because the assumption is people are going to get a few of these and maybe build a proper diorama out of it. That's what's included in a resin kit. Oh, forgot that. The other thing that makes them maybe a little bit harder than some of the that's just going to show you Epic. One of the things that makes them maybe a little more challenging is because they're, he knows that the people who are buying these have put a few kits together, and so the instructions tend to be maybe a little bit on the I wouldn't say that they're bad, but they tend to make assumptions that you sort of know, like you can figure out the order in which things have to be put together. So and I mean, they're not always like this, but Michael, when he builds his, he sort of does do them like this. So he kind of bundles things in. So, here you can, with the photo etch, you can just use a pen to push out rivet marks. And it's pretty well organized. It talks about, repeating things on opposite sides and whether something should be done as a sub-assembly. He talks about part numbers and whether things are just purely optional. But you can see here, he's telling you sort of what angle to fold each of these folds at. You know, this one should just be sort of a 45-degree fold, 30-degree fold, 45, 90, etc. So you kind of just do it as best you can and figure it out as you go along. But this is the kind of instruction that you would expect. There is a pilot figure included this. His pilot figures are great. I love the artwork of them. He tells you where there's photo etch combined with resin, how to bend stuff. There's some little gauges and dials on things. Then how to assemble the engine. And then the final assembly. This is something that's a little tricky that you'll find on a lot of resin kits is they make a lot of use of brass rod like this stuff. Let me brighten the camera up again here. So brass rod is very common in hobby circles, particularly in resin. It's used for both details, and it's also used a lot to simply pin parts together. Like imagine if you're building, well, I can show you one after I sort of finish up the front of the bow and we sort of start to wind the stream down. But when you're gluing, you can't really glue two chunks of resin together very well. It tends to be a little too fragile. So often you'll have to drill holes in two parts and use brass rod to connect them just to make sure they're strong. But in a lot of Michael's kits, like this, the front of this, you know, this isn't done in resin. These are individually cut pieces of brass rod, which are then glued to a photo etch top rail. So there's some tricky stuff like that you have to do that it just takes a lot of patience and you know, perseverance to make sure that you get it all right. Some people go so far as to solder them together. I don't do that. I just use crazy glue. But that's what you get for the manual in answer to your question. He just kind of says where things go. He's very much a use your imagination. Just do something different than what I do. And go for it. Okay, so we got like two more little parts here that we need to do. So let's keep going. Reposition this. Get our exposure right. Wrong way. So next up, we're going to do this part. So in order to do that, I need to mask over the two yellow sides that I have. So let's just use a bit of this. Gonna need some more of this soon. But I'm just going to lightly put it on. I don't want to, I really don't want to overdo it. There'll be some touch-ups I'll need to do on the railings. I just noticed that I completely forgot to do the top of that railing. Let's do that real quick. Hopefully I can still activate the, this will be a good test. It looks like I can. That's cool. Good. All right, let's do that side. We're going to get this side done. You know, while I'm saying this is a difficult resin, like kind of a more challenging, I wouldn't say it's difficult, it's a little more challenging. You got to go a little slower, a little more care in terms of masking stuff and just, you know, little details like this take a bit more time. I'll show you after we kind of finish this, as we wind things down, some just sort of the scale to which some of these resin kits can be. They can get very big. And if you're into giant robots, in that particular vein, they can get quite substantial. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to prep that. I'm wondering if I can do both of these at the same time. Risky. I better not. I'll leave that one. I might do this top bit off stream, this piece, just because it's getting a little late. I think there's some other stuff that I'll show you guys and wind things down. So just do 2 more pieces of this. This will be the last paint and chip part for the evening. Just cut some. It's time for a new scalpel blade. This one's just dead. And I'm just going to attach this tape to the other tape. I'm going to try not to get it on the paint. Just like that, that'll do. And to the booth. That's a backwards. There. Okay. Sorry about that. I was muted. All right. Heavy chipping fluid. Try that out.
that. Take that off. Now paint. Same go as before. One-to-one mix. Kind of an awkward shape to paint. Coming up on the end of my paint pot here, so try to even it out a little bit.
I was muted. Thank you for catching that. You guys didn't miss anything, though. I was just doing some quiet ASMR while I was peeling tape. Crafty, welcome. Thank you for dropping in. I am putting together a Waldo resin kit from Industria Mechanica. It is a small little tugboat, floating airship tugboat type thing that is it's a resin kit as well as a photo etch. Did you just wrap up streaming? Were you on tonight? And how was your day? How was your stream? Yeah, it's a really cool kit. I can show you sort of the vision board sort of pure ref scene I have of it here. This is generally this is what the finished kits look like. He's applied a little bit of a cartoon effect to that, but that is a photograph. I'm just using these as references. This is the gentleman who made it, Industria Mechanica. That's sort of the finished product that he did. I'm doing something in a very similar style. Anyway, cool stuff. I myself am just wrapping things up. Lots of little parts. Yes, a lot of little parts. And a lot of photo etch, which is, I don't know if it's something that you've come across. I know you do more the resin pours and things, but photo etch is like a brass sheet that is, you use a corrosive acid and a UV light to cut out, to create a chemical reaction to cut parts out. So all of the wheelhouse of this is made out of just very thin brass that had to be bent into shape. Not the easiest kit, but it's also a little one. It's a tiny one, which is kind of nice to just do a smaller one for once in a while. Because I was just before I signed out, I was just going to show some of my viewers a Tear 23 was asking what's included, and we kind of got onto the discussion of how you know what's included in these kits and how big can they get. And well, this is kind of a weird one because it's made up of a number of different types of material. There's real laser cut wood in it and all sorts of things. For the most part, resin kits are just resin. So I was going to get out one that I'm going to be doing. In the near future. I'm trying to get back into streaming a bit more frequently. I took a very long hiatus, and this is my first stream of since forever. I think it went pretty well, but I'm just going to put this away for a sec. Okay, so this is very common of what you would see in a resin kit in the classical sense. And I'm talking like a mecha type resin kit. You'll see a lot of anime style garage kits that are anime figures. This is more the sci-fi genre, which is more my wheelhouse. But let me just zoom out a bit here, do a little show and tell. So this is, let me open this guy up. Load recent. Yeah, so this is the Gundam Universe NZ66 Kashtraya, I think is the name of it. It's a resin kit. It's not a conversion for a Gunpla conversion, so it's all one kit. You don't need to buy any other things to build it. And the entire thing is resin. When I do this one up, I'm not going to do any weathering on it. It's just going to be very similar to what you see in this motif. But to give you an idea, like this one, if we go back to the main camera here, this one is just all small parts. And so each of these have to have the pour tabs removed. They have to be sanded, and they have to be cleaned. There's the arms. They have to be cleaned up, and then they all have to get pinned together with cyanoacrylate glue and brass rods. And then that's a dry fit, and then we paint them. So this one I think is about 300 or 400 parts. They have some ball joints, which is cool. Yes, all of these parts are one kit. So, like I said, it's like 200 or 300. And what's even crazier about this one, Crafty, is it's a blind build. Like if I go back to here, this is the instructions that they gave me. So this little scan here, this is the how to build that came with it. It just kind of tells you where to put the pegs, but it doesn't really tell you where any of the pieces go or what attaches to what. So you kind of have to figure that all out yourself. Hey, it's finished. Ta-da! Yeah, no. So yeah, this was really fun actually to do the, it all came all mixed up, and I had to sort of sit there and figure out what parts belong to what components of the actual kit. So, or like what were leg parts, and all based just on the photographs from the reference pieces that I showed you there. But this is far more typical of the science fiction resin kits that you get from places like E2046 and GKM model. That's kind of the main. This is the main sort of resin. When somebody says I do resin kits, this is kind of what's common. This is certainly on the larger size of things. Yeah, it's a hell of a build for sure. But it can be very satisfying. And just to sort of wind things up, I'm just going to do a BRB here, and I'm going to go grab a diorama that I finished over the Christmas break. Just hold on a second. I will be right back. Okay, so with all of my builds, I like to do, I don't just like to do straight builds and stick them on a shelf. I like to do dioramas and kind of go the extra distance. This is one I worked on over the Christmas holidays. That is this is a Rook, which is also an Industria Mechanica quadrupedal sort of battle mech kit. Painted, this is a solid resin, put together, painted, lighting kits put in. I scratch built the billboard out of just balsa, and did the photoshopped in some pin-up model to a line from it's actually a line from an album or a song that I appreciate from the band Tool. But yeah, this is the sort of thing that I really enjoy doing, and certainly with the Waldo that I was working on in Stream, it's going to be built into a setup like this. I also go so far as to do, see if I can find a USB cable. Is that one? That'll do. Is that plugged in? Yes. Thanks, Epic. Yeah, so I sort of intend to take all of the stuff I do on stream to this point. But it has a full Arduino based lighting system in it. So if I don't know if I can get the exposures right here, but let's just see. Let me just turn the battery on. Yes, you got it, Anima. Yeah, so here we go. So it has mini dollhouse lights in. Get a pointer. So dollhouse lighting in these were little lampshades. I couldn't find them like I couldn't carve them or sculpt them, so I just did them in Fusion 360 and then 3D printed them. But little dollhouse lights. So there are lights. They are hooked up to an Arduino microcontroller. So this light here will flicker randomly, which is kind of a nice little effect. The front of the mech has like headlights. You can kind of see there. And I also did a little trick where I cut out some of the metal in these exhaust ports in the back to give it a red effect. Sort of the exhaust ports. So yeah, that's kind of what I like doing. This is kind of my wheelhouse. You can see the flickering there a little bit. Yeah, so hopefully the Waldos that I do will be the same. Let me just turn the exposure down here a little bit. Yeah, thank you. I think it is pretty epic. I'm happy with it. It's a DAS modeling clay. Just, it's all it is DAS. Super simple. Any art store has it. You can buy this, these tufts. The billboard was done with balsa wood, which you can get at any hobby shop, and it's just cut and glued together with cyanoacrylate. Glues together really easily, and then I just weathered it a little bit with pigments. The weathering on this to make it look dusty and like it's in the desert, right? Is it's all just pigment, like loose pigment. And then there are a number of soldier sort of characters that go with it. I can see if I can find them. I haven't done them yet. I have a few little finished details that I need to do. So there's like a pilot that came with the mech. And I cut his hands off and flipped them over. He had them sort of facing down so he could use controls in it. This kit comes with a full cockpit, so you could build it with it open, where you can see all the guys in it. These are two little missile bays that open. And you can also open the hatch here. But instead I flipped his hands over, and I'm going to do an actual map, like they're lost or something. And then there are these shock troopers that I'm going to paint up, and they're going to be put around the scene. Like that. And there's 4 of them total. It's 1/35th scale. So I got to brush up on my mini painting. So just various, the desert terrain is just various bits of, you can get, it's called ballast for model railroads, and it's just different sizes of like fake rock. So just scattered that on. I use thin cyanoacrylate to lock it down onto the top of the DAS. And then the roadway is done with this material. Vallejo black lava asphalt, which is this weird... It's this weird kind of putty, but there's this sandy grit in it. And when it... You can kind of just use a palette knife to smush it around, which is what I did for the road. And then it dries into a black asphalt texture, which is pretty cool. And then I just painted it. It's all been painted. But yeah, that's kind of the... that's sort of just a little taste of the kind of, degree that I like to take the stuff that I work on. I was just never satisfied with building a kit and just sticking it on a shelf. Hey, thanks, Terra. Thank you so much for following. There's also graffiti on the back. Thank you so much for following. I appreciate you coming out and hanging with me for pretty much the whole stream. I think I'm going to call it an evening as well to everybody who is on. If you haven't already, please, it would help me a lot if you hit that follow button. Just get my numbers up and get more people knowing about who I am and what I am doing. I'm probably going to be streaming Fridays, Saturdays, Mondays, and Wednesdays. I haven't decided 100%. Late night Pacific time zone. I hope to catch you guys all. Good to see some faces from the past, like Crafty. I do occasionally tune into your channel as well. Yeah, thank you. It is a better that's what I feel too. I mean, if you're gonna do it right, Crafty. If you haven't followed Crafty, a shout out to her. Let me do that actually. I can actually use my my Twitch skills here. Is this gonna work? Huh. I'm still setting this stuff up. I don't really know what I'm doing with a lot of the Twitch stuff. Maybe I need an @ symbol. Let's try that. I don't know. Sorry, Crafty. Next time. I'll shout out next time. But yeah, I'm going to call it quits here and pull the plug on this. Thank you so much for everybody who came. Thank you to the new followers. Much appreciated. And I hope you all have a lovely weekend. And maybe if you're on tomorrow, I'll see you again. So yeah, thanks a lot and good night. Hey, cheers. Thanks. Good night, all.